So for step 6, the differential gear. Well, technically they should call this the differential gears because we need to make two of them. One differential for the front, one differential for the rear. Now what's interesting about the TT02 chassis is that in many cases the differential is made up of 3 bevel gears. Well, the TT02 is made up of 4 small bevel gears for both the front and the rear, and there are quite a few pieces for this step. There are all the gears that we need and the spindle itself. And the other thing is, in a lot of cases they have you use just regular grease. Well, they want you to use the anti-wear grease for these differentials. So I'll set this up and let's put these together. So right here it says apply anti-wear grease using an object with a fine tip. Well, I have some skewers just kicking around, so I'm going to use this. And you can see here we got to grab the differential case, which is this one here. So we'll put that down. And then obviously with it being all grayed out, they want you to grease it up with that anti-wear grease. So let's open this up. And it's interesting that they don't, to my mind, it doesn't seem like an awful lot that they're giving you. But let's grease this up as they say. They want, it looks like they want a little bit on the outside ring, because you can see that it's been totally grayed out, even the bottom by the looks of it. So I'm just gonna grease that up there, and we'll put that on the bottom side of it so that it fits down there, hopefully. There we go. And it says they want some on the top as well, so that's what we'll do. Just gonna move that around. And you can tell the anti-wear grease is a lot thicker. And I'm gonna put a fair bit on, but the bevel gears are gonna sit on top of this too, so I won't go overboard, but I'm trying to get it inside all of the grooves, which I have, so that's fine. So then with this, we need to grab our spindle, and it looks like they want you to grease that all up too. So we'll put a bit on there. Put some on there. It's almost like goo the way that this goes on. You can tell it's a much thicker consistency than your usual grease. So seems like there's a little bit on there. You can see that's what they're showing on the diagram as well. And we just need to get some onto the other spindle that now I'm going to end up getting all kind of greased up. Okay, so there's the spindle. So I'm going to actually just put these 4 smaller bevel gears in place, just like that. There we go. Now what I like to do, and you can see here, I can slide this down and into place, into that differential, just like that. And in order to grease them up, I like to do it this way, so that I can move things around while it's in there, because then it's actually helping to grease everything else as well, because you can see it's all moving as I go around. Put some in there. It's definitely a much thicker consistency. And I'm going to get a little bit, it's quite sticky too. There we go. So it's pretty evenly in there. I'm getting a nice amount going into each of the grooves. And you can hear it. Okay. So what we're going to do is now, once that part's done, we have to put on this one. So again, we need to grease this up. So we'll grease some on the top. And I'm kind of using this skewer to get the grease right down into the grooves. Or into the mesh, you could say, I guess. And it'll all be evenly on there. Okay, so now that can sit on top of there. You can see that they're also showing putting a bit of grease on the top part, so we'll do that. There we go. And then you can see that this is going to sit over top of that. So we just got to make sure that the four screw holes are going to be correct. So that's got to go into there. And then we've got to screw this in place so that it is nicely tight together. So I'm actually going to grab the screws. I didn't do that. I'll grab the screws and then we can screw this in. So now I've got all of the little screws here, these MA5 ones. We're going to start putting them in. And let's just see how these work. And I'm going to go around, which I always do. I don't tighten one down and then go around and tighten each one. I like to go around and make sure that they're not binding and that each screw actually is going into the holes properly. Nothing's twisting, nothing's binding. And then once they're all in, I pretty much put these together just like how when you go to your tire shop and they go around the bolts, the nuts on your car, and kind of crisscross as I tighten them up. And that way, you know, not one's not grabbing and then the other one's kind of not sitting right, and then you're forcing it in. Doing it this way, you kind of get an even feel for all of the screws all the way around. Anyways, you don't need to see all of this, so I'll just continue tightening them up, and then once it's done, we'll come back and take a look. Okay, so now all of these are nicely screwed in. It's complete, so we can move on to the other differential. However, the one thing that I like to do, and I think it's worth doing, is if you grab your drive cups off of the parts tree, so these guys right here, it is worth getting them and putting them in on both sides just to make sure that the differential is working well. So I can tell with moving it forward, everything's fine, moving it back, everything's fine, and if I hold onto one drive cup and spin, it's running really smooth. If I hold that side, it's running really smooth. Now it's interesting with the anti-wear grease because you can tell this is definitely smooth, but it's thick. Like you can tell that there is some interesting grease in there. Your typical grease that you normally put in the differentials is quite loose, I guess you could say, because I said this is stickier. But I can also tell that the more I do this, the more it kind of opens it up a bit. But either way, we know that this differential is working properly. So let's get on to the other one. So in the end, I decided to just finish this off because you've already seen me do the first one and nothing's going to change. The only difference is, again, I'm just going to do a quick test with the two drive cups, make sure that they work, and they do. I mean, this is really nice and smooth. And by doing this, you at least confirm that you've built the differentials properly. And yeah, that feels really, really good. So that is done. Now, the only thing I didn't mention, which maybe I didn't really have to, but I mean, you're seeing here, they're saying with an X-Acto knife, cut off the burbs off of the gears, because obviously this comes off a parts tree. But, you know, the easier thing is get yourself a pair of side cutters. These are extremely useful for almost everything, and you can get a nice clean cut. So I use those for taking off the burbs off the gears. But anyway, that's it. So I'll put those aside. We've got our differentials built. So now we're going to move on to step 7 and attach the front differential.